Hello, today I'm going to teach you the 5 types of chemical reactions. The first one is called a combination reaction, also known as a synthesis reaction. And this is where you combine two elements together. So you would have A plus B gives me AB. Very simple to understand. So let's say I had sodium and I wanted to join it to chlorine gas. I would then end up with NaCl salt. Now, of course, I would have to balance my equation, and here would be my combination reaction. The second type of reaction is the opposite of combination. Ask yourself, what is the opposite of a combination reaction? That's right, that would be a decomposition reaction. So in this case, AB will simply split up into separate elements, into its separate elements of A plus B. A simple example of that would be the hydrolysis or the decomposition of water. Okay, so here you have water, and what it does, it will actually split up into its two gases, oxygen and hydrogen. Of course, you would have to balance this by putting a 2 in front of the water. So these two were pretty simple because they were kind of the opposite of each other. Now the third type of reaction is called a single replacement reaction. And in this case, we have a reaction happening between one element and a pair. In this case, it would be an ionic compound. And what happens is that they basically switch partners. So instead of A being alone, this time A would pair with C and leave B on its own. Now, as I said, BC right here would be an ionic compound with a positive cation and a negative anion. So an example of this could be something like zinc exposed to hydrochloric acid, which is HCl. And this reaction would actually give us zinc chloride and release a hydrogen gas. Again, you would have to balance the chemical equation by simply putting a 2 here, and the reaction will be balanced. The fourth type of reaction would be basically two pairs switching partners. What do I mean by that? Well, this is called a double replacement reaction. Again, you have to be very careful that you swap the right partners. So in a case where you had AB and CD, the swap would occur so that you would have so that the new pair consists of one cation and one anion. So here, this will be my positive cation, and if B and D are my negative anions, what I would have is AD plus CB. As you can see, positive, negative, and then positive, negative. So an example of that could be something like silver nitrate combining with calcium chloride, and again swapping partners so that now instead of Ag being with NO3, it's with Cl. So now you have AgCl. And now instead of calcium being with Cl, it is now with NO3. Okay? So obviously you would have to balance this equation. You would put a 2 here for the AgCl, AgNO3, a 2 here, and then the 2 NAs, yes, and I believe that's how it would balance out. So again, number 3 and number 4 are kind of similar, where you have some kind of swapping going on. Next and last is the 5th type of chemical reaction called a combustion reaction. So what is a combustion? Well, this is where basically you have an explosion, right? You're going to add oxygen to it. You're going to burn something in oxygen, and you're going to release a great amount of energy. And in order for that to happen, you need to have some kind of fuel, which usually is a hydrocarbon. A hydrocarbon is simply a compound that has hydrogen and carbon. Thus, here represented by carbon X and HY, meaning any number of carbon with any number of hydrogen would represent my fuel here. And then when you expose that to the air, to the oxygen, it will actually release carbon dioxide, water, and a ton of energy, right? Now, in biological molecules, this would be ATP, right? And this is very close to what cellular respiration does. So, an example of that could be something very simple, such as dicarbon tetrahydride. We expose this fuel to oxygen, and then we get carbon dioxide and water. Again, after balancing this chemical equation, you would have to put a 2 here and a 2 there, and then a 2 here and a 3 there to balance this chemical equation. So these are the 5 types of chemical equations that you will find in chemistry. Thank you for listening. I hope you paid attention to the lecture. Now, I left a mistake on purpose in one of these chemical reactions. Can you identify where the mistake is? I'll give you a hint. One of the chemical equations is not properly balanced. Please pause the video and find out where it is. Great, you found it. It is right here. There should be a 2 in front of the hydrogen.